Good afternoon, Capital Sci-Fi Con Virtual Edition watchers. We are now here for our Dark Crystal Q&A panel with Simon Williamson. How are you doing, Simon? You okay?
I'm doing fine. Yeah.
Fantastic. And we also have Mike Quinn.
Hello. Oh, hi there. Yes, I didn't know this was a Dark Crystal panel. Well, even better. What a nice surprise. Happy Saturday, everybody.
And hello to Toby Philpott. How are you doing, Toby?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. Fantastic. And our host for this panel is Des O'Gorman. How are you doing, Des?
I am good, Keith. I am nervous as all hell, but I am ready to give my best for this panel.
Fantastic. So without further ado, what I'll do is I will hand over to Des, who will be hosting the panel, and I will come back for your questions that you want to put forward. So if you want to put any questions across, make sure you type them up and I will ask them. Without further ado, Des O'Gorman, take it away.
Well, first and foremost, hello, as Keith mentioned, hello everybody, and welcome to the Dark Crystal panel. I suppose I'll get the ball rolling. Obviously, Dark Crystal, it's a hugely popular film. I think it's fair to say that it's one of the more underlined popular films from the Jim Henson Productions. Did it kind of feel that way whenever the film started to shoot? And I'll start with Simon. Let's start with Simon on that. How did it feel taking part in this production?
Well, we kind of knew how different it was. For a start, it was extremely difficult to describe, even from the advert and the stage to which I responded. Didn't quite know exactly what they were getting at, but the involvement of the Henson organization kind of made us think, oh, it's a kind of Muppet-like thing, except it was Muppets with seriousness in a serious, realistic world. And then Equity, the Actors Union, got involved really quite quickly, because the way us mime artists were employed, the structure of employment over a long period was unusual. So everything about it was unusual. And we all us performers came from various different disciplines, some acting, some circus like Toby, and street theater, and 3 separate kind of schools of ballet, so to speak. And it was very different. So we were all very individual and sort of stuck into this world by Jean-Pierre Amiel, the Swiss mime choreographer. So yes, it was noticeably groundbreaking right from the word go. And the fact that we were rehearsing for 9 months before we turned over a roll of film.
Yeah, and Toby, was it the same for yourself? Did you first and foremost, Simon brought up a point, is that Simon knew that this was a Jim Henson production before he signed on. Was it the same for yourself? Were you aware that this was part of the Jim Henson house, or how did you get involved?
Well, yes, I did, but I didn't think I was qualified for such a thing because, I was a street performer, I was a juggler, an acrobat and stuff. And it was my mime teacher. I was studying mime with a guy called Desmond Jones. And he said there's an advertisement in the trade paper that you should go for. And it said something odd. It did say the Henson organization, but it said something like dancers, acrobats, clowns wanted to operate big creatures or something. It was quite vague. And he said, no, go for it, go for it. He said, you're qualified. You've done mime, you've done mask work, you're fit and all that. So yes, I kind of knew it was the Hensons. And because my dad was a puppeteer, I was already, quite well tuned into the Muppet Show and stuff like that. Because although I didn't have a TV at the time, I used to go and watch the Muppets in my dad's house. And he really loved what they were doing with puppets because he was a traditional puppeteer and generally didn't approve of TV puppets because he thought they were a bit lame usually, but he loved the Muppets. So I thought, well, I'll go to the audition because I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to meet Frank Oz and Jim Henson and do an audition with them. I mean, I was nervous because I didn't know what I was offering. But the thing was, it wasn't like an ordinary audition. You didn't go in and do a piece because there wasn't a piece to do. So they literally put us in like a workshop. They'd put us in groups of 20 or whatever into a room with some bits and pieces of puppets like gloves and a mask and stuff. And then just get us to improvise. because they were looking for people who could take direction, who could improvise, who could manifest living creatures, if you want, which was, what their target was, because they didn't know, they hadn't done this before either. So you've got to bear in mind that Jim and Frank were also working blind. The only thing that had been done similar was Yoda. Now, Yoda was very successful in the Star Wars franchise, operated by Frank Oz, right? And Dark Crystal was just taking the same kind of technology, which was quite primitive back then, and trying to make a whole world of it, where you don't think of it as a puppet like Miss Piggy or Kermit or something, but as a living, breathing being, because everyone thinks of Yoda as a living being. No one thinks of him as a puppet or a little guy in a mask or whatever. He's just Yoda. He's alive. Yeah. And the Dark Crystal is kind of a showcase of what else you can do with that same assumption. So it was fantastic. I got to say, when I went into the audition, I was nervous, but once it was playing and doing workshops, and I'd been studying for 7 years, learning all sorts of new things. So I'm quite a quick learner. Plus, I wasn't frightened of puppets or mask work and stuff. And it was curious. I almost immediately thought, I'm perfect for this job. I'm going to get this job. Because at that point, there were 200 people and they were going in groups of 20, But I just felt so comfortable and relaxed that I thought, I'm going to get this job, and I did, which was quite a surprise.
And thus leads you to here. So it became like a full circle effect for you, Toby. And Mike, was it the same type of thing for you as well? Were you aware that this was Jim Henson, and was there some apprehension or fear going for a job like that?
Right. Yeah. Certainly, what the lads are saying, said already, is exactly 100% correct. Toby mentioned the word sort of perfect time, perfect there, but it was almost a perfect storm in a way for us all to converge on this great conjunction. Almost, it was. Let me just turn off this distracting thing. Yeah, that shouldn't be up. There we go. Basically, I was already with Henson at that time for the Great Muppet Caper, and they basically so Lou Grade had lost money on Raise the Titanic. I think he'd already had a success with the Muppet movie a few years before, and so Lou wanted to make another Muppet film to get his money back because the first one did so well. And Jim Henson wanted to make his, fantasy film, The Dark Crystal, that he'd been planning for several years. So I think the way it worked out is they basically, one said, I'll make your film if you'll make mine, kind of thing. And that's why it ended up being a 2-picture deal with the back-to-back with the same crew in the same studio. So I was hired on The Great Muppet Caper as a puppeteer, basically. I was learning how it worked, how to do this stuff on film and how to work these characters. But because one of the puppet builders, one of Jim Henson's original Muppet builders, Bobby Payne, remembered me from visiting the Muppet Show workshop in the beginning of 1980, and he'd seen puppets that I'd made, that I'd brought in. So he was heading up the modeling department for the build while Great Muppet Caper was filming. So when I wasn't on set filming Muppet things, I'd go to the Hampstead workshop and work on building podlings and slaves under Bobby Payne, who was also the historian Skeksis as well in the film. So I kind of was kept busy the whole time. But what was really interesting was, and you guys will probably remember this too, Toby and Simon, is we would do film tests at the end of the day, to both for movement and lighting and paint textures and all kinds of things. So we were sort of, developing Dark Crystal and having workshops. I think you guys went to the puppet workshops too, right? The puppetry workshops that Jim and Frank gave, and a few others. In Unit B, wasn't it, at Elstree? They had the mirrors and video cameras set up and stuff, where they were building the Mystics and Gotham, I think, too, at that point in time. So we'd have these workshops, these puppet workshops. So we'd learn how to, because, up until that time, we were just doing, Muppets, and Muppets were like, hey, I'm a Muppet, yay, yippee doodle, and all that stuff. And they were like, well, no, actually, you know, we're going to have to do realistic creatures now, and they're going to have to be like living, breathing things, and we can't do big flappy, you know, Muppet things. They've all got to be like really realistic and look like they have little feet walking, and very, very much sort of subtle lip sync, and you know, everything had to be brought way down and made more realistic. Sorry, I didn't invite this guy here. You have to leave now. No, please, no. Yeah, you got to go. Sorry. So there was all that stuff going on. It was a wonderful, magical time, though, wasn't it, guys? I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, but none of this had been done before. Like, the only point of reference was Yoda from Empire Strikes Back, which was absolutely amazing and fantastic. And yeah, it was Frank Oz and Kathy Mullen, Dave Barkley, Stuart Freeborn, and who else? But yeah, Wendy Froud, of course, did the original sculpt before I think Stuart Freeborn redid it a little bit, and I think she did all the puppet fabrication on Yoda as well, the body and the limbs and things. So it was sort of a more of a Henson creature than it was, I guess, a Lucasfilm creature originally, at least because of all the input. But that was the only point of reference that we had for any animatronic hand puppet creature of any kind. E.T. hadn't even been done yet at that point. So yeah, do you remember, like, guys, we rehearsed for months. I mean, I was more in the Skeksis unit, but we had to figure out, you know, well, how do you do this stuff, and how do you work cable controls on a face and make it look good, and what is too much and what's too little, and what is real and what's not. So it was a huge learning curve. But that for both of us, though, I mean, for both of us, all three of us, that kind of set us up for Return of the Jedi as well, didn't it? And everything beyond that. So I mean, it was just this amazing magical time, really, that there was, everything just came together perfectly, like a great conjunction.
Well, yeah, one of the things, Simon and I, when we were originally hired, were hired to just do big creatures, like one-man puppets, like the Garthim and the Mystics, and they had to be living, breathing, you know, animated creatures, but they didn't have the subtlety of eye blinks and all those sort of things. So our initial job was just to do very big, very uncomfortable creatures. And only once we'd done those fittings and movement tests and stuff, did I get assigned to Jim Henson's team, because, as you say, the lead characters were mostly 3 or 4 person puppets, and so I was working with Jim while he was figuring out that stuff that you're just saying, you know, and because he was directing the movie, we probably got a bit less rehearsal than some of the other Skeksis.
Yeah,
because he threw me in at the deep end. Basically, me and Robbie Barnett and Wendy sometimes, we would pretty well have to just go for it. And because Jim was so trusting of our ability, and so, you know, he never ever challenged what we did. He might say, okay, try this, try that, but it was always positive feedback. And yeah, like I say, he said, I'm learning too. So if you can come up with a thing, you know, we noticed about blinking and breathing, and we had to analyze movement that changed it from that Muppety thing to something more realistic. You know, like with Jen walking, for instance, Jim would be walking the creature along, but he didn't want to do the Muppet walk. So Robbie and I would have one hand each, and we would do the hand swinging to make it look more like a proper walk, you know. And there were just little things like that, which we were evolving every day. I mean, there wasn't much practice in advance. It was nearly always blocking the shot out as it was needed. And I found it fascinating. I mean, it was just absolutely wonderful and magical. And then, of course, after that, we got involved with pod people and background creatures. So there wasn't a day when I sat in the dressing room and did nothing, which is normally like on a film set. You know, we were always there doing little jungle creatures or, you know, whatever. So it was a complete immersion into the world. It was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And Toby and Mick, you've both mentioned that a lot of bases came from obviously the creation of Yoda for Empire Strikes Back. And Yoda, as you say, that Yoda is not really referred to as like a Muppet or a puppet. It's Yoda. It's a real creature. And if you go back and you rewatch Dark Crystal, you're 100% right that it's not Muppets or Muppet movement. These are actual creatures that inhabit this world, and unfortunately, there's something kind of lost now because everything's done with computer generation, and most of the characters are done with those type of those weird striped suits that they will fix it in post later. Do you still feel that there's still a need for proper puppet characters that can interact with sets, interact with actors, and be slightly more tangible for an actor to respond
I'm
to?
telling you, yeah. I'm telling you, this stuff is present very much so. It's all, a lot of it, so much of it has come back now. You know, the physical puppets, creatures, foam creatures. There's swing. I always knew. I mean, puppetry never left anyway. People thought it had, but it never did. And I knew that once people got the lure of CG out of their veins and sort of could understand how best to use the technology for what it does best and how best to use the practical effects for what they do best. And we reached that. We kind of came to that about it. I think it really started to happen big time around the time of The Force Awakens and then the new movies, where there was so much more practical puppets and animatronic costumes using the same technologies, foam, latex, and animatronics and all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of practical puppets again now, both Muppet type things. There's been an explosion lately. I mean, things kind of went a bit quiet this last year for some unknown reason. I can't think what happened in this past 12 months, but anyway, that's what you get for living under a rock, isn't it? But you know, we've got things like The Mandalorian now, where there's so much practical effects again, and costumes and animatronic masks and puppetry and rods and radio controlled parts and things like that. So it's very much alive now. And you know, fans have always said, you know, I'm sure you guys have experienced the same thing. They come to your table and like, you know, CG is great and all, but I just really love that Jabba was, you know, a real thing in camera, you know, and yeah, while he couldn't do all the things a CG Jabba could do, that was good, right, Toby? I mean, the limitations are good because he was real, you know.
Physically there is the point. You know there's that something there rather than, you know, something which is created essentially in a computer or
like I mean,
in a computer.
Yeah, I mean, something that came up just recently was you know, Little Shop of Horrors, because I hear they're remaking that or something, and you know, that was all in camera, all those plants, all those different sizes, and what was it, 60 odd puppeteers at one point right at the end, you know, and but it was like it was crazy, it was intense, and it was hard, and you know, I hurt my arm doing some lip sync stuff on that. But it was, you know, it's real, it's in camera, and people just love it. And a lot of producers and directors are starting to understand that now, that that's what people want. For a while, people kept telling me that, well, you know, this had to be CG because puppets couldn't do it. And that's not true. It's just because people didn't know what puppets can do. You got to get the right people in place. But yeah, I think, and also people would say, oh, well, you know, puppets are animatronics too expensive. It's much cheaper to do it in CG. And I disagree. I don't think that's true at all. You know, I mean, but just use them both for what they do best, really. You use the tech to remove puppeteers and remove rods and do set extensions and help out with those kinds of things. But just use everything for what it does best, really. But it's wonderful to see it coming back, you know. So we've all got to stay alive long enough to do more work, right? How are we going to do that?
I think
the main thing. Sorry.
People doing budgets for films, they might look at the fact that on a puppetry-led film, you essentially raise the floor as well. So you have, you know, a set within a set, so to speak. So you raise the floor, so you got the puppeteers underneath, and they, oh, it's too expensive. Can we find some way of not having to do that? And then they got the lure of what was at one time very new CGI. So for a period, you know, that was the go-to way of doing things. As Mike says, what the fans all say is they love the fact they know there's something physically there, you know. And also actors going beyond Dark Crystal into films where the puppets interact with real actors like Labyrinth. I think actors like to act opposite a puppet rather than a tennis ball that's representing something that's going to be created later.
Yeah, puppets interact directly, and they can improvise, they can change rhythms, you know, so that I mean, I as I said, I grew up with a traditional puppet father, and he liked live shows. He did a little bit of TV. He didn't like it because there was no feedback from the audience, which would be the equivalent of the actors. When he was doing his live show, the puppets would be acting. If one of the kids in the audience shouted out, "Look out, he's behind you," or something, the puppets would go, "Sorry, what? What? Who said that?" And, you know, immediately they're alive because they're actually interacting with you in real time. And for the actors, it's exactly the same. They're working with a creature that responds to them. If they fumble a line, the creature can immediately improvise a different answer. Well, once you're into CGI, it's all being done after the actor's job is finished, you know, and it's all a bit odd. I just like live puppets. Plus, they look tangibly realer, you know. I mean, the thing about Jabba, he looks as though he weighs half a ton, and that he's fairly disgusting, and he really was and did, you know. Whereas CGI looks sort of clean. It's just got it doesn't have that same heft, you know, same weight,
mass.
Yeah. There's no tangibility to that. You can kind of tell with certain CGI that there's kind of like a weightlessness to it.
Yes, weight, exactly.
Yeah. And there's something always magical about puppetry. If you look at certain films, for example, Dark Crystal or Labyrinth, or a personal favorite of mine, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Vogons, they're big, hefty creatures, and you can see them interact. With these type of creatures that you were working on Dark Crystal, were you allowed to have some freedom to create specific character traits that could help you enrich who you were playing?
I think you do naturally whenever you perform anything. You know, you have the choices that you make, but the first job was to actually hide the physical body, the human body that you were having, and make this creature work as if it were a real creature. So that was the first and prime task, which took a long time and was very physically demanding and difficult. So there's only kind of a certain amount of time you could do something for before the illusion is either destroyed or physically you're not able to carry on. So with
the Skeksis, they're very distinctive, but the big creatures that we initially did, Simon and me, you know, Garstim are not distinctive. They're absolutely uniform and mechanical. And the Mystics, although we had backstories because they matched with a twin Skeksis, we didn't. Again, they look very similar. We didn't have much time to evolve personality for them. But inside it, you know, we were aware of who we thought we were.
Yes, Wes is going to butt in there, Toby. But in many ways, that's why Jean-Pierre Amiel, the mime, chose a very different group of people whose personalities and skill sets were very different, because then automatically, if we're all playing the same species of mystics, so to speak, there's naturally already a kind of a difference in the way.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you would kind of think, well, I think I know why he picked me, but why did he pick? So we're not at all similar. We might clash personality wise. So I think it's very clever, you know, of Amiel, the way he cast us all and chose us for our complementary characters, because most of the time, certainly on the Mystics, on which we spent most of the pre-production time, was overcoming the actual basic physical issues of how to be a mystic, rather than then think about the external or detail of the character.
Yeah.
Mike, do you agree with that? Do you feel that you were able to create something for yourself, or was this a bit more uniformed, as was mentioned?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually still worried about the fact that Toby just said he had a puppet father. So I'm like imagining him some kind of Geppetto
marionette or puppet.
I want to be a real father. So maybe he was carved out of wood originally. So, but I can't really quite get past that. But if I can put that aside for a minute, yes. Actually, well, that's the thing. I was thinking about Jim, though. He wanted you to bring whatever you could bring to the table. He didn't want to micromanage and tell you how to do everything and every line and how to walk, how to turn, how to do every single thing. He would sort of like let you find that, let you discover it. And he let me I made so many mistakes on film that are in the final cut as well. That are in there. I was given pretty well free reign, and when I was rehearsing with my cable crew for the Skeksis, you know, we were just in front of mirrors and old video monitors and whatever we had, and we were just kind of left to it, really. So only if we totally screwed up would they say, don't do that, you know. But of course, remember, we had two directors on the film, you know, Jim Henson and Frank Oz. And I think Jim gave Frank the co-directing role because he knew that Frank wanted to move into directing and that this would be a good foot in the door for him. So, you know, Jim's the way he generally worked with everyone is he left them to it. And he was more of a big picture kind of guy, you know, creating the worlds and the looks and an idea for something. And he let people play within his world. Whereas Frank, I think, got much more into the specifics of the characters and narrowed things down and the motivations behind it. And as he would with Yoda, you know, he approached Yoda as an actor would approach the character. You know, everything was broken down and everything had to have a backstory and a reason. And I never really got much direction from them, though, in that I recall, which I guess is a good thing because it must have meant that we were all kind of on the same wavelength. I do remember one time, though, it was early on in the Crystal Chamber with this. I was doing my Skeksis, this Slave Master Skeksis, and I remember I had to look over at something. And I remember I had the Skeksis do a double take, like you know, which is just intuitive. You know, you do it with a Muppet. You're improvising, and then, you know, in between the takes, Frank Oz did come over and say, "Oh no, you know, you did a double take. Don't do that. Just look over. Just don't do a double take." And of course, he was absolutely right. You know, so that's, I think, the one direction I actually remember getting.
It turns out characters in Dark Crystal are physically unable to do double takes, so we can now tick that one off if that ever comes up in a pub quiz.
Yes, never. Yeah, exactly. It's like that's yes. In the land of time, we didn't do double takes back then.
I honestly thought you were going to go into like David Attenborough reminisce of pub quizzes, but we'll let that one go for another time. The one thing I always like to ask actors or performers, or especially puppeteers, is I know a few families have gotten back into Muppets and Dark Crystal because of like Netflix and what's happened over the past year, and some kids may wish to follow in those footsteps of becoming puppeteers and characters for Star Wars or Jim Henson or any of these productions. Is there any like single piece of advice that you would give to anybody that wishes to go along that career? And Toby, well, I'll start with you. If there's a single piece of advice that you would give.
Well, it's a bit difficult for me because you know, the puppet world has two aspects. One is building puppets, and the other is operating them. Now, a lot of clever people do both. You know, they build puppets and operate their own. Mm-hmm. I didn't really build puppets, even though I grew up around a puppet family. I was mostly involved in theatre sort of side. So to me, I was given puppets which I then operate, and that's, you can practice puppetry with, you know, with any given puppet. If that's the skill that you want to do, then I would, you know, get a couple of puppets and practice with them. You know, Mike makes puppets that you can get to practice with. But I suspect that most puppeteers I know get in by being builders, by making puppets and therefore understanding the limitations and the possibilities. And I think Mike would probably answer this question better. How you actually get the job is a different issue. That's a different thing. But I think if you make puppets, you're more likely to find yourself in the environment where you end up operating them as well.
Yeah. Mike, do you wish to follow on from what Toby said?
Yeah. Okay. Basically, I mean, I think the number one thing is you know, you start out doing it for fun, because if it's not fun, then it's going to come through, and you know, you're just going to hate yourself because it's physically hard anyway. You know, it's not easy to do this stuff, but it is a technique that can be learned, just like walking or you know, driving a car. You can learn this stuff, and playing a musical instrument. So and I know, like, historically people have come at it from all different aspects. Like Louise Gold came at it from her acting as an basic actress, so, and stage performer and things. So she came at it from that side. We all enter this puppetry world from our own little corners, I suppose. Advice, I would say, something that's helped me along the way is to do more than one thing. You know, don't just be, I want to be the #1 most famous puppeteer in the world, because you that won't happen, you know. So if you can do multiple things, like if you can build, as Toby said, if you can perform, if you can write, if you can direct, produce, you know, or whatever other aspects within the industry, you will probably stand a better chance of staying in employment more, and also understanding those other aspects. Another thing I would say is put yourself in front of the people who are already doing it, you know, which is easier now with social media. So, you know, if you surround yourself with people who've done this and have that experience and that knowledge, some of that is going to rub off on you. You know, there's that saying that where they say you become the average of the 5 people you hang out with or spend the most time with. And it's true, you know. So get to, you know, if someone's really keen to just, and you can just do it for fun. It doesn't even have to be a career. You know, you can just do it to entertain the grandkids or parties, you know, behind the sofa or something at Christmas. But that's the thing, you know, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be, you could be do it for fun, be part-time, full-time or whatever, but just to have fun with it and get out there and contact the people who are actually doing it and get advice. And that's the same whether you want to be a cartoonist or a singer or an actor or a voiceover artist or whatever. You know, just don't try and do it on your own, I think, really. And this, you know, we're in a world now where we can all reach out to each other instantly, which is fantastic. And by the way, I also have an academy called Secrets of Puppetry, where you can, and I'm actually going to have a special next week for International Puppeteer Day or International Puppetry Day. I think it's on the 21st of March. So I'll be putting some discounts out for about a week on that. But it's basically teaching everyone from day one, you know, what happens with your hand and how do you actually stand and how do you actually, what are all the tricks and techniques and stuff. So there is that, which I didn't have when I started, and I wish that I had, which is why I created this. So yeah, but just do it for fun, you know. I mean, for goodness sake, life's too short.
If I knew that Mick was going to plug his business, I would have demanded 25% up front. I should have prepared for
only,
that one.
Only 25%.
I mean, I'm
30,
cheap,
man.
but I get the job done. I am reasonably priced amongst the hosts in Edinburgh. Keith, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do, and we're going to have to do it as a speed round because there is a lot of questions that have come through. So I will direct a question to each person, and if you can answer it as quickly as you possibly can, that will be amazing. So HC Stevie says, what was it like to work with Jim Henson production, and what were your opinions on the Dark Crystal Netflix series? And that is for Simon Williamson.
Well, I wasn't on any of Jim's personal crews, but he was a great overall boss. It was terrific to work with Jim and with Frank on the whole thing. It was just, oh God, speed up. And after initially being a little bit concerned about the Dark Crystal series, I thought, what is a 2-hour film or 1.5-hour film? How are they going to expand that to 10 hours? I think the story will be pretty thin. After watching the first episode, I was absolutely hooked on the series. I thought it's terrific. I thought there were quite a few sequences that were basically repetitions of similar sequences in the original film and expanded, but it worked all very well for that. I loved it. I loved the new series.
Perfect. Thank you, Simon. And that answers Jesse Moe's question at the same time as well. Next one is Michelle Kim Wade. Would you consider doing a sequel for the Dark Crystal? It says Jack. So that's from quickly, Mike. Would you?
Would I consider it? Yes, I absolutely would. 100%. I'd be right behind it. We only got 5 minutes left. Next question.
Perfect. Thank you very much, sir. Gareth Ross, how has puppetry evolved since your first feature-length film? And do you always think there will be a place for practical effects? I think we really answered that earlier on. Quickly, Toby.
Yeah, I only made films in the 80s, so the evolution of the techniques being used now is beyond me. When I watched the Netflix making of, I realized that things have progressed. We were very primitive what we were doing, good though it was.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Next one is Lewis Pennycook. What character in the Dark Crystal is your favorite, Mr. Simon Williamson?
The one I played, Ursol the Chanter. In fact, here he is.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Fantastic. Alexa had asked about puppetry and CGI, which we've covered as well. Jesse Mose, do you have any tips for anyone wanting to be a puppeteer? Mike Quinn?
Wanting to appear,
Wanting to be a puppeteer, yeah.
Oh yes, we kind of covered that already too, didn't we?
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
So do it and have fun. Yep.
Yep, perfect. Mandy Louise Paul just states that the Dark Crystal film was amazing. Robert Guest said that Dark Crystal is my all-time favorite Jim Henson movie, which is nice to hear as well. Robert Guest also says puppeteers are the unsung heroes of the movie industry. So that was a very kind comment to make as well. Jesse Mose says, my partner weirdly thinks the Skeksis are really attractive, so you guys made them sexy.
That was what we were thinking at the time when we were performing them. You know, how can this transcend the years? Absolutely.
Yeah, well done, gentlemen.
I was just a left hand and a Skeksis, so wow.
But
it was a very attractive left
sexy.
hand. So
yes.
well done.
Yeah, she says she's got a lot to live up to in her relationship as well.
Well, my character did have a lot of leather and studs and a hook and you know, but yeah, we won't go into that.
Yeah.
Move on from this, Keith. Move on from this, Keith. We can't end it on that one. We can't end it with that.
Robert Guest also said, how long did it take shooting the Dark Crystal, and what were the challenges that you faced during production? So we'll do a quick, because we've got a couple of minutes, a quick one for each of you. Simon Williamson.
We actually shot for 11 months, I believe, but we were rehearsing for like 6 months before that, I seem to remember. The challenges, I suppose, the major challenges for Toby and I and the mimes was the mystics, and most of pre-production was spent on making the mystics work, and then after about a week of shooting, we'd done pretty much most of the mystic shots, strangely.
Perfect. What I'll do now is we'll leave it at that for that question. Toby, do you have an autograph website or anything that you want to plug very quickly?
Yeah, I do sell signed photos through the mail. You can find me easily enough on Wikipedia or IMDb. My general website is just tobyphilpott.uk, and it's got links there through to the shop page and so on.
Fantastic, thank you. Simon, have you got a website for autographs or anything?
Yes, it's simonjwilliamson.co.uk. So it's Simon with a J, the letter J in the middle of it, Williamson.co.uk. Perfect.
And Mike?
And yeah, I have a bunch of different. I keep changing my websites and pages for different things, but right now I've got a sketch card that I'm selling. So it's a little sketch of my Star Wars character and the signature next to it. You can find me on social media and look it up on Instagram, Secrets of Puppetry, or on Facebook or whatever. Just find me and you'll find links, or message me. So yeah, there you go.
Did you draw the sketches, Mike?
What's that?
Did you draw the sketches? Are they your own art?
Yeah. I'm drawing little 9 head and shoulders. You know, because sketch cards are kind of a nice collectible, and that's you guys might want to think about that too. Actually, I limited them to 250 per sketch, just printed up, same size as kind of like this, but same sort of size, tops sort of size, nice little card. But you can print them up and then sketch on them, and fans would love that stuff. So it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right. Sorry, if I look like I'm sleeping through this Q&A when my head goes down, I'm working 2 mobile phones and a laptop at the same time. So I am not sleeping. I'm just interacting with everyone behind the scenes.
Of course he is. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Listen, that is the end of our Dark Crystal Q&A panel. I want to say thank you to Mr. Simon J. Williamson.
Cheers. And as you're in Scotland, I want to wish Scotland great luck in the rugby today.
Perfect. Thank you to Mike Quinn.
Thank you so much. Yeah, always good to be on this stuff, and good to see everybody there. And thanks for looking in on us. Thank you. Yeah.
And thank you to Mr. Toby Philpott.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And thank you to Des as well for hosting the panel. Listen, I hope you've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've seen lots of comments coming through, lots of interactions. Keep going, keep enjoying the rest of the day. We have another pre-recorded video which is about to be shared to the page, and our next live Q&A panel is Game of Thrones at 1:20. That is with Miltos Gerolamo, Ian White, and Ross Mullen. So make sure that you are ready to tune in for that. Fire your questions in as we are doing the live as well, and I will try my best to get through as many as possible. We are here right through till 10:30 this evening. It's action-packed, non-stop, pre-recorded music, interviews, live Q&As for the rest of the evening, finishing off with our DJ and a special interview with myself, Alexa, and Falcon. So, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the Q&A panel for the Dark Crystal. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye, guys. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Woo!